is sponsored by Connecticut Business Systems, a Xerox company, beyond the expected. By Frontier Communications. Frontier.
All right, stand by, guys.
Don't go it alone. And by Last Fly Airport Parking. We've got lots to offer. Now, let's talk UConn football. Here's your host, Bob Joyce.
And good evening, everyone, or good afternoon if you're watching on Facebook Live. Welcome to the first edition of the UConn Football Coaches Show with head coach Randy Edsall, back for his second season in stint number 2 as the head coach of the Huskies as the Huskies begin year number 122 of playing college football. And it's also the return of the Block C as the Huskies will take on UCF Thursday night at Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field at 7 o'clock. And our coverage on the UConn IMG Sports Network begins with our countdown to kickoff at 5:30. First of all, belated happy birthday to you there, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just a kid, right?
Yeah, just another day in the life. You know, I don't know, it wasn't any different than any other day that I've had in the last probably 40 years.
Yeah, you're here at football practice, right?
Exactly.
You've gone through everything in the preseason getting ready for opening day. Do you feel like you've accomplished everything you possibly can to get the kids ready?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we've come off the field this morning, and really that was our last practice that we have. We'll have a little bit of a walkthrough tomorrow and meetings, and have another some meetings on Thursday morning since it's a night game. But yeah, I feel the kids are prepared. I think we've covered all the things that we need to cover, and in the opening games, there's things you're going to have to adjust to because you might get something a little bit different than what you thought you were going to get, and with the new coaching staff coming in and they're at UCF, you're not sure exactly what they might be doing. You have things you can study. But, I think the thing is, if you just always stick to your fundamentals and techniques and the basics, you can adjust to whatever they do.
And we'll talk a bit about techniques a little later on with his young defense. Each competition, or the competition at each position, was it what you hoped for with a young group?
I thought it was good. I mean, it's an ongoing competition, Bob. I mean, that's one thing. Even as we speak right now, I mean, there were guys today that we take a look at, and we're evaluating because I mean we're a very young and inexperienced team on defense, and so what we're going to try to do is try to make sure that we utilize as many of the young men that we have and put them in roles where they can be successful, to do the things that we feel we have to do in order to, slow the other team down, stop the other team, and then the same thing offensively. So the more that we can use guys that have demonstrated that they have the ability to play, then we're going to try to do that and develop as much depth and experience as we can throughout the year.
One of the themes that you've talked about in the offseason and through camp is accountability, and it's not with the coaches to the players, but it's the players holding each other accountable. Have you seen more examples of that throughout the last month?
Yeah, it is. It's that's something that we've really tried to work on with the young men throughout this offseason since January. I'm just a firm believer that if it doesn't come from within, you're never going to be as good as you want to be. And whether my experiences as a player, as an assistant coach, or as a head coach, when the team and the players took charge and held each other accountable, you always had more success. If it always had to be coach-driven, then you were never going to reach the level that you wanted to reach. So it's got to come within, and the best teams, like I said, that I either played on or was an assistant coach or head coach with, it came because it happened because those players weren't going to let their teammates do anything that wasn't in accordance with the system and the structure that was set up to be successful.
And just to reiterate, you have a leadership council, and I know you were on our flagship station back in Newport at American Conference Media Day. Each member of the leadership council has a different responsibility this year, correct?
They do. And we have 13 guys on that leadership council, and each one is in charge of a certain aspect of our program: offense, defense, special teams, strength, academics, operations, training room, equipment room, community service, the nutrition, the players' lounge. And again, it's those little things that you have to do in order to be successful. And those guys, and what I do is I'm not going after the guy who doesn't do it the right way, I'm going after the guy who's in charge of that area and saying, hey, there's people in your area that aren't living up to what they're supposed to. You got to do something about this. You got to get everybody on board to do that. And it's no different in life. They leave here and they go somewhere to pursue their lifelong dream. Guess what? And they're put in that position. They're responsible for other people below them. So they learn that now. They're going to be ahead of other people when they come out of here. So, and it's worked well, and it's been a good thing.
One last thing as far as camp goes, other than the injury that ends Donovan O'Reilly's season with the knee injury, which is a tough one to deal with, relatively injury-free the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean we have some guys that a little bit bumped up, but they should be okay. But some guys are still struggling a little bit, and but hopefully here in the next 48 hours, they'll be able to recover, or it'll just be a situation where maybe they won't play as much as what we anticipate them to, but they'll be able to play. But based on some bumps and bruises, it might not be as many snaps as we might have had hoped for.
All right, we'll talk some personnel first on the offensive side of the ball when we come back. It is our first UConn Football Coaches Show with Randy Edsall right here on the UConn IMG Sports Network. Back with more after this.
I'm here with
The UConn Football Coaches Show continues on the UConn IMG Sports Network. Here again, Bob Joyce.
Welcome back to the Coaches Show. Bob Joyce, Randy Edsall here in the coach's office. The rest of the shows this season will be done at the iHeart Studios in Hartford, but seeing as we're 2 days out from opening day, Randy was kind enough to get us in here early and get this show done almost on opening day. Has opening day for you changed at all from when you first started, even as a player, to now? What's it like for you?
Well, it's for me, it's one of those things you want to make sure you've got everything covered, that you've dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and you tried to get as much live work in as you could with your program and your team, but you tried to avoid injuries. And I think that's one thing that I think we've done. And then the other thing is, I think when you have a young team, as we do, you've got to make sure that your coaches understand that as much as maybe things you want to do, you might not be able to do because they won't be able to handle some of those things. So that's the balancing act you have as the head coach, is to make sure that you get all those things incorporated, make sure you're doing enough, but yet not enough, and then try to get as much of the quality work in and live work in as you can, but then also hopefully you stay healthy enough so you can be pretty much at full strength when you open up.
Now, one thing you emphasized on Sunday when the two deeps came out, this is a very fluid two deep because from day to day you can see different things and you decide who to start. Have you seen the younger guys particularly tighten up a little bit as we get closer to opening day?
Yeah, to be truthful, some of them have, and that's a thing that we're trying to, and we saw it with some of them when we scrimmaged there in the last scrimmage we had at Rentschler Field. It took them a while to get going in the scrimmage because they go in there and they've never been in there before, and now all of a sudden you get into where you're the game plan and you're practicing and you get out. There are a couple guys that are tight right now, and there might be some guys that maybe is listed on that two deep that might have had as starters that might not start. But so let them get a feel for things and see it, and then get them in there because, and again, that's just experience from me, seeing these things and being out there at practice. And if it's like I said, it's you have some other guys that they've been there before, or they see it, and the young kid isn't performing in practice. Well, if he's not getting it done and he's a little bit more tentative now than he was before, then it might be where, hey, he doesn't start the first series, somebody else does, and then he gets an opportunity to go in there once the things settle down a little bit. And plus, in an opening ball game, it's tough because if you see new things and they got to try to react to it, something they didn't practice, and if they don't have that experience, now all of a sudden, then they play tentative, and if you're playing tentative, you can't play.
Right. Well, one we hope will not be is David Pindell, who actually started opening day last year and then was relieved by Bryant Sheriffs in the second half. What have you liked about his play in the preseason that gives you reason to be optimistic?
Well, I just see a very confident young man that really feels comfortable in what we're doing offensively, and he's been handling that, and he's worked extremely hard. And again, you can tell he's much more confident. He's more open. He talks more and smiles and laughs and feels comfortable, with the guys and everything else, and feels comfortable in the situation. And that's what you go by. And I really believe, in my mind, this kid has worked extremely hard. He's one of the hardest workers that we have on our team. So I'm expecting him to have a good year for us.
What do you like about John Dunn, your new offensive coordinator? What have you liked from what you've seen so far?
Well, John is John coached for me at Maryland, and I was very impressed with John there. But then John had an opportunity to go and work for the Chicago Bears for 2 years, and his role there, working directly with the offensive coordinator, it really, and again, and I had the same opportunities to coach in the NFL. I just think when you've coached in the NFL, you gain a broader knowledge of the game, and also in terms of teaching and different things that go on. And he's brought a system in here where it's been very, very easy to learn for our guys because there's a rhyme and reason as to what you're doing. And I think that's the one thing that's made David very comfortable. It's that system where he can relate to it, and it's been easy to pick up. And the one thing with John, there's no gray area. He makes it where there's no gray area for those kids that hey, this is the way we need to do it. It's how we have to do it in order for us to be successful.
If there's one place on the roster where you see seniors, it's at the wideout position. The three particular starters in Tyreek Beals, Kyle Buss, and Hergy Mayala. A year older. Does it mean they're a year better in what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I believe that they are a year better. Tyreek, I see him catching the ball better this year. I see him more focused this year. Kyle Buss had some personal issues that he was dealing with, last year that weighed heavy on him, and and now he's much more comfortable, and you see him being more relaxed and doing a good job, and he's stronger and everything else. And then I think Hergy has gotten better because with John and what we're doing, and then with Aaron, I think he's really elevated his game a little bit in terms of route running and understanding concepts and defenses and what they're trying to do. And so I see all three of those guys who have gotten better.
Is Kyle a slot type of guy, like, and I'm not going to compare him to a Julian Edelman or a Danny Amendola, but that type of player for your offense?
Yeah, he's a guy that is a good quickness and movement and make people miss. And he's one of those guys that has the knack to find the seams and find the holes, and real solid football player.
What about the tight end spot? Tyler Davis is back. We talked about this, I think, on Media Day, your Media Day, that Aaron McLean has moved from wide out to tight end. Have you liked what you've seen from him?
Yeah, and you give Aaron credit. Aaron came in and saw the offense and what we were doing with the offense because, we're a team we're going to use 11 personnel. We'll use 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends. And he saw what role the tight ends were going to have in this offense. And he kind of saw himself, well, I'm really not a wide receiver, and it would be better for me to be a tight end in this offense. And he came to us and said he wanted to move, and we welcomed that. And he's picked everything up really, really well. And when you have 2 guys like Tyler and you have Aaron and then even Jay Rose, there's a lot of things that you can do offensively, and it puts some stress on the defense. So all 3 of those guys are going to be a big factor in what we do this year.
You've always had some terrific running backs in your days here, starting with Terry Colley and finishing up with Jordan Todman. You think if he continues to develop that Xavier Scott could be one of those guys? Tell us about him from Fort Hood, Texas, correct?
Yeah, well, and through Germany and other parts.
So he's an Army brat.
Yeah. And now his dad and his family is back at Fort Dix in Jersey, so they're going to get a chance to see him play, which I think is just wonderful for him and the family. But, he was a young man that came to our camp, and we saw him and, liked him. He ran well. And then when you see him, he's a very mature young man. And, again, a young man that's moved and had to adjust and make sacrifices and all those sort of things. But I've been very, very impressed with him in terms of him picking things up, and, again, his speed and the things that he's been able to do. And all he's got to do is continue to get better, and he works extremely hard. And I don't want to make any comparisons right yet, but I have some in my mind. He reminds me of one of the guys that we've had, but I'll reserve that until actually he goes out and plays a little bit more before I start making comparisons, and don't want to put too much pressure on the young man.
Before we get to the break, the offensive line, which will help Xavier Scott and Kevin Mensah, and for that matter, everybody else to protect the quarterback and that sort of thing. Ryan Crozier in the middle, Matt Parrott, Ryan Vandermark, they're back along with Cam DeGeorge. You're starting another freshman, though, Christian Hayes. What have you liked about the young man from Maryland?
Well, he's a young man who's very, very powerful. And he's a young man that's picked things up really well. He did roll his ankle here about a week ago, and was made really, really good progress. But he's a young man that, like I said, we like. He's physical, and he's got was able to pick things up, and now he's going to be he would be sandwiched in between Matt Pert and Ryan Crozier there. So that's something that we'll see him come along. And Matt, I think, has stepped his game up, and having Ryan in there is a fifth-year senior, and as smart as he is and what we want to do and make the calls that we have to make, he's very capable. And Cam has gotten bigger and stronger, and Ryan's a year older. So I really like how that's developed. I like what's happened with Nino Leone, Brian Cespedes, and James Tunstall. And we moved Noel Browse to tackle. So the one thing I think we've done there is we do have some guys that can go in and play, that some of them still have to get bigger and get more stronger, and they will as they continue to go, because a lot of them are either redshirt freshmen or redshirt sophomores. So I think we do have Stanley Hubbard at center. We got guys that we have there. Now we just got to keep developing those guys.
All right, we will talk the baby-faced defense when we come back here on the UConn Football Coaches Show, and we'll have a special guest in a little bit, Alfred Fincher, who is one of Randy's favorite linebackers, favorite leaders for that matter, of all time.
He's the guy that set the tone.
He is indeed. We'll come back with more of the Coaches Show after this here on the UConn IMG Sports Network. 12 Coaches Shows with Randy Edsall. We'll be back next Tuesday in Hartford for that one as we get set for Boise State. Don't forget, Thursday night, 5:30 for the UConn IMG Countdown to Kickoff pregame. Our flagship is out there. That's just 97.9 ESPN's out there starting at 3. And they'll be there all day as we get set for a new era in UConn IMG Sports Network history. Let's talk defense now. You've got a kiddie core defensively. I don't know if you've ever had a team. I don't know if any team's had a team two deep as young as yours. You've got 9 true freshmen on your two deeps. That's crazy.
Yeah, we do. But you know what? The thing that I like is that they're eager. They want to learn. Yeah, they're making some mistakes, but they're coachable, and they want to get better. And and that's all you can ask. I mean, with what we do defensively and with the techniques that we're asking them to play and do, a lot of them have never done those things, or they've never had to be as accountable and understand that you're seeing really good quarterbacks all the time. In high school, sometimes you might see one good quarterback in their season that they run into. But I do like the fact that they're all eager and they're working at it, and again, they're just going to continue to get better, and that's the thing. Each and every day you can see some progress being made.
One thing you mentioned a week and a half into camp is that John Dunn's offense, all the different looks, has benefited the defense. You feel that way still?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the one thing is you'd rather have them, see all that stuff and see it in practice, and, then that way if they get it in a game, they've seen it before, instead of just seeing – one personnel grouping, one formation, no motions, no adjustments, or anything along those lines. The biggest thing, here's the thing, Bob, for these kids, the biggest thing for them, all these young kids, will be the speed of the game on Thursday night. Because it's going to be a lot faster for them than what they've seen, and even what we've seen, in practice, a little bit. So, that's the one thing. They're going to have to, and that's where all of a sudden you go out there and you first start, like, woo, this is a little bit faster than even what we thought, and so that'll be one of the adjustments that they'll have to make on Thursday night.
Yeah, they only get Mackenzie Milton right out of the gate, no problem.
Exactly.
You mentioned on Sunday techniques. You mentioned somewhere between 6 to 8 techniques to be able to learn and to implement everything you can do defensively, keeping it simple. Also, eye discipline. We'll get to that in a minute. But what sort of techniques are we talking about?
Well, each position, and the way that I think it's easy to teach, that if you have, I like to teach it from the standpoint, if they're like in the secondary, if you can master at the safety in the corner 6 techniques, you'll be able to play any coverage that we want to play. You might have a level technique, and that's for a corner, where he's going to make sure it's like a 2-deep zone deal where you're going to, jam the receiver and get a certain amount of depth. You're going to have to play a read technique. Means that you got the guy man-to-man except for the China or the under, and a China is a 5-yard stop and the under is going right now. A close third technique. You got to see if number 2's coming vertical, then you got to split them. So if you can master like 6, and the same thing at safeties and the different techniques for linebackers, and even with the defensive line, so that's why I say you don't talk so much about coverage, you talk about technique. Because within all those coverage, there's a technique you have to play to execute that coverage. And so instead of thinking all these different coverages, you just think about technique. So we would never teach, hey, what's the cover? No, what's your technique? Because if you can say this, and it's a one-word answer. And so if you can execute that, then you're going to be a lot better off. And it makes where you can play younger guys a little bit quicker because they can pick up on things a little bit easier.
And then there's that eye discipline
that
is so important. And for a freshman, that's got to be hard.
It is. They want to stare in the backfield. They want to just watch the ball. And that's where we gotta continue to harp on the young men. And it's just like when you're going to drive a wide receiver, whether a running back, if you're playing man-to-man, a lot of times these guys go to break and then they'll take their eyes and turn them back to the quarterback instead of going and putting their eyes on the upfield shoulder, and you don't go and look for the ball until you feel like you can touch the guy. Because once you feel you can touch him and you're taking that that angle to the upfield shoulder. Then you can shoot the hip and try to pick it if you can get both hands. If not, then you got to secure, and then you got to strip, the ball or knock the ball down. And so, again, that's just fundamentals, right there where, a lot of these guys in high school were told, see ball, get ball,
It doesn't work that way in college and pros.
No, it doesn't. You got to be more disciplined.
What about your linebacker position? Ian Swenson is the man who, at least right now, is starting at your Husky position. I know you've been impressed with his work ethic and his comprehension of the defense.
Yeah, Ian has done a really good job, and he had some playing time last year and then got injured, and we were able to get that year back. But, again, he's in competition there with Marche Terry, and again, that's the one thing that I like is the fact is we got two guys there that we feel like we can play, but Ian's done a good job, and he's very sound, and he does do a good job fundamentally. And, he's a guy that, we're going to have to, he's going to play, and we're going to have to utilize him and utilize a lot of guys. But, that's one position there at linebacker. And then, we got a chance with some of those other linebackers where, again, we feel like we have two guys at each position that if we have to, we can play, or if we need to get in different packages, we're able to do that as well.
What do you think Eli Thomas is feeling like right now, getting ready to play a college football game? I think for the first time. Is that true?
He hadn't played since high school.
Wow.
Because of all those knee injuries, and that's like I said, when you take a look, like the other day when there was one group that was out there on the field on defense, there was only one guy that had any not even significant snaps, but had snaps in the defense. Nobody else had any snaps. And so I'm looking there and say, ooh, wow, I didn't realize that, But like I said, that's the situation we have, and now they got to step up to the challenge.
We've heard a lot about Travis Jones in the middle of up front, 6'4", 350. What about a few of the other guys worth noting up front that could potentially turn into somebody special?
Well, you have the veterans in terms of Kevin Murphy, Caleb Thomas, who redshirted last year. You got Ryan Fines, who is a grad transfer from Miami that, again, up on that defensive line, you're going to rotate a bunch of guys. You're not going to play all those guys every snap. And then, James Atkins has a good camp. And then the other two young guys, Jonathan Pace and Luau, have done a good job. So, you're going to see a lot of guys rolling there on that front three, in and out of the game, because there isn't a lot of experience. And, again, you always have to have depth on that defensive line. So, some of those, Jonathan, Luau, and Travis and Caleb and some of those, Ryan Fines never played here before. And James Atkins hasn't played a lot. Murph has played, quite a little bit for us. But all those guys are going to rotate in there, keep them fresh and gain experience.
When we come back here on the UConn Football Coaches Show, we will visit with old number 9, or for one game, number 4. Alfred Fincher, middle linebacker from the mid-2000s, played with Danny O and was a part of the first bowl game in UConn football history. That's next on the Coaches Show here on the UConn IMG Sports Network.
Here again, Bob Joyce.
For the season opener against UCF, that'll be Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Plenty of tickets available to see the first of 2 consecutive ranked opponents for UConn. Have you ever opened a season with back-to-back ranked teams?
I don't think so. I don't remember it, put it that way. But, no, hey, it is what it is. It's a challenge and great opportunity, and that's what you want. It's you can go out and make a name for yourself if you do what you're supposed to do.
See, I knew you were going to say that it is what it is. That's a Randy Edsall signature. Before we get Finch, who will be calling in momentarily, quick thought on your special teams group. And you have a new special teams coach, in Eddie Allen.
Eddie Allen's very good. He's done a really good job with the guys. Luke Magliozzi is going to be the punter for us. And
he's the Australian, correct?
Yes, and he's had a really solid camp. Michael Tarbut has got a really strong leg. And, again, he's been pretty consistent throughout the preseason. And, I think the one thing is we have a lot of guys that are going to be involved in the special teams, and we have some guys that are 4 core guys that play all of them. And then, you'll see starters out there as well. So, and that's where we'll even get some more of the young guys some playing time. To kind of, cut their teeth a little bit on special teams as they're playing as a backup in offense or defense.
Speaking of which, there are a lot of new rules in college football this season, and one of those is the fair catch on the kickoff. How does that change strategy?
I don't think it'll change a whole lot, Bob. I think what will happen is if you try to get teams that will pooch kick it and try to kick it as high as they can to come, say, down on the 10-yard line, then what will happen is that I know what we're going to do. We're going to tell the guy to go ahead and fair catch it, and we'll take the ball on the 25-yard line, because there's some times where if they hit it really high and they got a really good kicker that can place it, you're going to be better off doing that, so you put the ball on the 25. So, there's certain things that I think it'll change, but for the most part, I think in college, a lot of those guys can kick the ball out of the end zone, and if you do get it in the end zone, just keep it in there.
Penalty enforcing on field goal plays, blocking below the waist are some of the new rules this year. Knee pads and pants.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting. If your knee pads aren't down, they're going to make you go out for a play. I want to see how they're going to enforce that one now. That'll be really fun.
Okay. Do you have a word or two that you would like to, as we introduce Alfred Fincher, that you recall about this young man who was just a beast of a linebacker with, was it James Hargraves and Maurice Lloyd?
To me, this is the guy that really changed the program, for us when I was here before. He was a guy that was not afraid to step out and take the bull by the horn and be the guy who was the leader that said, hey, follow me and listen to me. And, so much respect for him and what he did. And, the one thing is, if he told me that he was going to get something done, he was going to get something done. And he would take it upon himself to do things. And, he had some great leaders with him in terms of Ryan Krug and Dan Orlowski. But this was a guy that, dared to be different and dared to take a stand. And if he never did that, I don't think we would have been able to do what we did here when I was here before.
Alfred, of course, a native of Norwood, Massachusetts, who just recently celebrated a birthday. Geez, you were born the year I graduated high school. Now I feel really old. Finch, how are you, my friend?
Good. How you guys doing?
Good. When you hear something like that from Coach Edsall, and I know that's the type of player you were here, but when you hear it directly from Coach, that's got to mean a whole lot to you, knowing what he means to you.
Yeah, when you hear that, it's tough. There's sometimes it's, words can't describe how you feel, but it just basically shows me that everything that we did while we were there meant something, and that it was important to him and important to what we were trying to get accomplished, and that I was doing the right thing. Trying to get things done and get the program rolling and things like that. So it just means a lot, for sure.
Finch was part of the 2002, 3, and 4 teams that really got this turnaround going. And 2002 was the benchmark. I remember this vividly. Tommy Collins, who was a captain on that team, saying before the season started things were going to be drastically different this year, workouts, the whole 9 yards. You got a glimpse of it against Boston College in the opener. I think it was 2-6, and then you won your last 4 games of the season. Was there a turning point, Randy, in that particular season when you thought that this team finally got it and knew they could turn things around?
I just think it's one of those things where, you're building and you're trying to do things that you want to do, and then all of a sudden it clicks. It just takes form. And, as you get through the season and you start going, and finally something, it just happens because you've worked hard, you put things in, put the time in, and you're prepared the right way, that, just that one thing that all of a sudden it clicks. And it's hard to maybe put your finger on it. But then once you get it going, then that's the fun part, because once you see it, and we got it going there, and the momentum really rolled until all the way when we beat Iowa State. Mm-hmm. And that's really the neat part, to see how that all came about.
Finch, take me through that offseason, 2002 to 2003. You end with a 4-game win streak. Rentschler Field's opening up. You play in front of close to 40,000 against Indiana. What was it like getting ready for that next season for all of you? And you had some great leadership. Randy mentioned, of course, Danny O, and one of the guys you mentioned at the road show, glue guys, Ryan Krug, to have those guys with leadership with you. What was that like going through that offseason, getting ready for 03?
Well, what I think is, going off of the point of that one moment that happened for that season, I know we ended off on a 4-game win streak, but for us, during the summer, we had a moment where things changed, and I think that's where it started. Maybe our play didn't show at the beginning, but we had a moment over the summer where one of our guys was late, and long story short, it basically ended up into a fight. And in that moment is where guys said things are changing. And literally we did change from there. Once we had that kind of scuffle, and then we got it all out of our system. And then going into that season, we just had a different mindset and different focus. We wanted to be good. I know my class coming in, we were ranked like 117th in the whole country at the time, and we just wanted to be good. We put in the work. We really grinded all off season. We got bigger, faster, stronger, and we really thought we had the pieces to be able to do something special, and we just wanted to prove it.
Well, that gets back to the point that we were talking about before Alfred came on, was the fact is, if it's going to get done, it's going to get done because of the players. It ain't going to get done because of the coaches. If they want to do it and it's important to them, they'll make sure it gets done, because they'll put the pressure on their peers, on their teammates, on their brothers, to say this is the way it's going to be. And then what happens, it starts to snowball, and you get everybody to buy in, and everybody says, okay, here we go. But it takes 1 or 2 people to get that going, and that's where, like I said, Alfred didn't care what people felt about him. He wanted to win, and he had the work ethic, and he had the wherewithal to say, this is what we're going to do, and you don't like me? Fuck. Whoops, I should have hit the drop button. Oh, man.
Jeez, never mind. Wow. Gino, maybe, not you. I wouldn't expect that from them.
See, Finch gets me going, that's all.
I know, right?
One thing, a couple of years ago, I did a feature when you were still at Maryland. You were kind enough, Finch, Danny O, a couple other guys. I did a feature on the 2003 team, because I always think that's the forgotten team around here, because they weren't affiliated with any conference. They didn't get to a bowl game despite 9 wins. But that was really when things really started to take off, and you knew that this program could be something special. Talked about the North Carolina State game, the last game that UConn lost that year. Finch, you think to this day that's the game where Danny really came out and really showed that he could be something, don't you?
Yeah, well, listen, I don't give Dan too much credit at all, but I'm going to give him credit today.
I'm glad things haven't changed.
Things haven't changed. Listen, normally, when you're playing the game, offense is out there. A lot of the times you're just on the bench kind of trying to breathe, go over adjustments. But that was one day where, we were playing well, and Dan was putting on a show. and we were up watching him on defense, and he made one ball. He threw a ball. It was like a cover 2 hole shot, and I said, this guy is on today. And I just watched as a fan, and I was proud. Obviously, he was my roommate and my best friend, so I was real proud. But that was the day he really stepped up, and then obviously we were going against Phillip Rivers, and I think it meant something to him, and it was just a great day.
He drew up plays, I guess. He mentioned he drew up plays on the sideline saying, hey, if we do this, this will work. These were like unscripted plays, and you got 2 touchdowns out of them.
Well, but see, that's what you want.
Right.
Because they're invested. Mm-hmm. Then they're invested. They know, the players know. I mean, you want that feedback. They're the ones that are out there playing the game. And if they come off, it's just like when you go into a game, you want to ask your quarterback, what do you feel comfortable with? And what do you like? And then, as the game, there's got to be constant feedback. Same thing on defense, the same thing. And when you get that from your players back to the coaches, it makes a world of difference. Makes a world of difference. And that's what you want. And that's how you want your guys, thinking. And, I tell this story all the time. When we were going to play Pittsburgh on a short week, we go, they come in my office in the old field house over there, and they're sitting on the couch.
Well, that was 04, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Big East opener. I remember.
Well, no, it wasn't the opener. It was because we were playing during the season, but they came in, and we were going to have a short week. And I told them we're going to go in full pads and all this stuff and everything else. And they said, Coach, we're tired and everything else. And so, I wanted to challenge them a little bit. I said, you guys are just soft, and you guys just don't want to work. And so I wanted to see what they had to say. No, we're so I told them, I said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll do it your way, but you better make sure it gets done. Okay? I'm putting it on you guys. And guess what? They went and did it, and we beat them. We beat Pittsburgh on a Thursday night, right, Alfred?
Yeah, no, that was a great classic moment. We talk about that all the time. I mean, from my point of view, we did go in there. We went in there, and I think it was my body language that probably set it off because I kind of sat slouched on the couch. But it was true. The message was true. Before we had went in there, we were in the locker room, and the guys were like, "We're exhausted." And I usually had a pulse of the team. I could tell if they were just trying to play around or it was for real. And I felt like it was for real. So I felt like I should mention it. And, man, I mentioned it to Coach Edsall, and I caught it. You know what I'm saying? I caught the wrath for sure. And Dan's telling me to stop yelling. We're going back and forth. And literally we went out to practice, and I thought it was over. As soon as we broke the stretch line, he starts yelling again. And I just called the team up and I said, listen, he's yelling at me. You know what I'm saying? I said, I got you guys the uppers. Don't make me look bad. And literally we just went out there, we practiced hard, and we ended up playing well. So it worked out at the end.
That was the first Big East Conference home game at the Rent in 2004. The place was insane, and you went out and dominated Pittsburgh. I remember that vividly. More with Coach and Finch for a few more minutes on the Coach's Show after this on the UConn IMG Sports Network.
Sports Network. Here again, Bob Joyce.
With Randy Edsall and our guest on the phone, former UConn linebacker Alfred Fincher, who along with Terry Cawley will be at the Rent this weekend or on Thursday for the opener against UCF. When is the last time, Finch, that you actually saw a game in person up here?
Oh, my goodness. I couldn't even tell you, to be honest. I've gone to some road games, but, you know, it's kind of different when Randy wasn't there. So I haven't been back in a while. I couldn't even tell you.
What was it like playing in front of 40,000 at the Rent when that place really got cranked?
You know what's funny is what makes the Rent special is, like, the way it's set up. You kind of drops down in there, and it has, like, a good feel to it. And I think when opposing teams come into it, it feels funky for them. We've always played good in there. And then the student section gets rocket. You know, I think a lot of teams underestimate that. And we've had a lot of good success in there, and it was always a good place to play.
Robert Griffin III still says it's the loudest place he ever played a college football game. That says a lot considering some of the places he's played in the Big 12 days.
There's no doubt. And, and that's what we got to get back to. I mean, we've lost that. And we got to get that back and, again, bringing back the history and tradition, of this program with Alfred coming back and Terry coming back. That's what we got to do because that's when we were successful, and still you can still remember, it's interesting, Al, Leandre Dupree and a couple guys were up here a couple weeks ago and Gary Whitehead, Newey, and those guys, and Dupe asked me for the 2003 highlight tape, and so I got that, and I burned it for him, and I was watching that just yesterday, and just watching you guys play and getting after people in that opening game and all those things. I mean, the excitement in the stadium there was just unbelievable, and now that it's 15 years, again, it's very special, and we got to get it back to being special.
For sure.
Finch, one more thing before we let you go. You're going to have Terry up here. You mentioned about Dan. Before Terry injured his knee, he was terrific. It was just so much fun to watch. What was it like watching him on the sideline operate at the tailback position?
Jesus. It's funny. Terry and I have been talking all week, and, he's kind of giving me some props during text. But I told him, I said, Terry, man, you really changed the game for us. I mean, Terry, he was just so special. And I don't even know I know you guys saw it, but you had to just really be out there with him. He was so special. Everybody see how small he is. He was so fast. He was so compact. He was actually really powerful. You know what I mean? And he was just so dynamic, and he changed the game. I remember going against our offense every day. I mean, they would put in new style plays for him because he could do things other guys couldn't do. And he really elevated us. He made us feel like we could win. You know what I mean? Like, when we were turning that corner, he made us feel like we had a chance. And he was really special.
Yeah, he was a guy that could do it all. He could play all three downs: first down, second down, third down. He pass protection. And then and just very, very humble. Didn't say a whole lot. And just worked. And I know Finch and those guys, they used to hate going against him because, and like he said, he was very strong and very powerful. And, that run that he made against Indiana in the opening game where he hit those guys and came out of it and took it for, a touchdown. I mean, very, very, very special. And, it's just a shame that what happened to him in that Virginia Tech game because he could have been, that was an injury that really didn't allow him to continue to be who he was and how special he could be.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, Finch, we're going to let you go here. If you're out early, come by Gate C, stop by, say hi to us. It'd be great to see you, and thank you for spending a few minutes with us here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, see you tomorrow. Later. Okay, buddy.
Alfred Fincher. We'll take one last break, and then we'll get ready for UConn and UCF. It's the Coaches Show with Randy Edsall here on the UConn IMG Sports Network. Final minute on the Coach's Show. One quick question. In the locker room before you head out for the final time, are you one of these rah-rah guys that gives a big speech, or just keep it simple, stupid, and go out and play?
I try to keep it simple. At that point in time, they're juiced up and they know what if you got to make a rah-rah speech before this,
right.
before when you only have 12 games and you don't need that. My thing is, I'm just going to tell them, hey guys, go have fun, play hard, play every play like it's the last play you're ever going to play, and understand, just do your job. You do that, we're going to give ourselves an opportunity to win. So just go play and have fun, and don't worry. Hey, don't worry about making a mistake. Be fearless. Just let it go and have fun.
It'll be fun this year. Good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Or Thursday. Coach's Show is done. Thanks to Coach Edsall. Thanks to Alfred Fincher. Thanks to Drew Casey back in the studio. We'll talk to you Thursday night, 5:30 on the network for the Countdown to Kickoff. I'm Bob Joyce. Thanks for watching and listening on the UConn IMG Sports Network.